Hello and welcome to another edition of Daf Yomi. I'm using a Steinsaltz edition, the Chullin Daf tractate, and we're on Perek 1, Daf 5 Amud B. So I'm just going to dive straight in. Me'am ha'oret parat lim shumad. If any one of the common people sins unwittingly and shall bring his offering, the risk is 4:27 to 28, from which it is inferred in a brighter of the common people, indicating but not all of the common people. This serves to exclude a transgressor. So the footnote here, Ma'am ha'oret parat lim shumad v'chulu. With regard to a Jew who is a transgressor concerning one transgression, even if he does so to satisfy his own appetite, one does not accept an offering for him to atone for that transgression. Nevertheless, the transgressor with regard to one transgression, who committed another transgression unwittingly, he habitually eats fruit and then eats blood unwittingly. He may bring a sin offering to atone for the unwitting sin, here consuming blood. This ruling is in accordance with the opinion of the first Tanna according to Rabbi's explanation of the dispute. Rabbi say for Avodah Hilchot Ma'aseh Korbanot 3:4, and Eva Korbanot Hilchot Shekagot 3:7, from whom a sin is not accepted. Rabbi Shimon ben Yossi says in the name of Rabbi Shimon that the verse states, and does unwittingly one of these things that may not be done, and he becomes guilty, or if his sin that he sinned became known to him, Leviticus 4:22-23, from the word became known to him is inferred. One who penetrates his awareness that he performed transgression, as had he known that the action is prohibited, he would not have performed it. With an atonement for his unwitting transgression in order to achieve atonement. But one who does not repent due to his awareness that he has sinned, each transgressor who would have sinned even if being aware that the act is prohibited, does not bring an offering for his unwitting action, because it's not unwitting, it's deliberate. And we say, what is the difference between their two opinions? Rabbi Hanuna said, the difference is in the case of a transgressor with regard to eating the forbidden fat. Chaylev is forbidden fat. This refers to animal fat that is forbidden by consumption by Torah in contrast to permitted fat. Intentionally eating the forbidden fat of kosher domestic animals is punished by kavod, Leviticus 7:22-25, and a sin offering is brought for partaking of it unwittingly. It's permitted to eat all the fat of the non-domesticated kosher animals and of kosher birds. One of the signs that differentiate forbidden fat from permitted fat is that forbidden fat lies above the flesh and is not intertwined with it. Rather, it is surrounded by thin membrane and can be easily peeled from the flesh. Most of the forbidden fat of a sacrificial animal was burned on the altar. The Mexican animal and he put an offering for unwittingly consuming blood is the difference between them. According to the first Tanna, he may not bring an offering as he is a transgressor. According to Rabbi Shimon, since he repented for unwittingly consuming blood due to his awareness that he sinned, he brings a sin offering for that unwitting sin. In any case, this bright apparently contradicts the previously cited bright with regard to the source for the law that one does not accept an offering from the transgressor. The Gemara answers. One source teaches with regard to the sin offering, chatos. If a Jew commits a transgression whose intentional commission is punished by kavod, he is obligated to bring a sin offering. A sin offering brought by an individual consists of a female lamb or goat in its first year. It is slaughtered in the northern section of the temple courtyard, and its blood is received there and then sprinkled on each of the four corners of the altar. The fat of the sin offering are burned on the altar, and its flesh is eaten by the priest. Other sin offerings are brought as part of the purification right at the conclusion of a period of ritual impurity, e.g. a woman after childbirth. In addition, there are other sin offerings brought to atone for the community, as well as special sin offerings brought by the leaders of the people to atone for the transgression or a transgressor that is not accepted. And one so teaches with regard to the burnt offering. What's a burnt offering? A burnt offering which is brought from male cattle, sheep, goats, or doves is totally consumed on the altar. It is sacrificed to atone for the intentional non-fulfillment of a positive mitzvah and for immoral or idolatrous thoughts, as well as in certain situations where individuals are required to bring a burnt offering along with other offerings. Many of the communal offerings, e.g. the daily offerings and the many of the additional offerings brought on Shabbat and festivals, are burnt offerings. The individuals typically brings offering as a gift offering. Burnt offerings are offerings in the most sacred order. They must be slaughtered in the northern portion of the temple courtyard, and their blood is sprinkled twice on the northeastern and southwestern corners of the altar, so that the blood will reach all four sides of the altar. Afterwards, the animal's hind is flayed and given to the priest, and its limbs are separated. The remainder of the blood is then poured out on the base of the altar, and the limbs are sacrificed on the altar. So that is not accepted, and both sources are necessary. And if the Torah had taught us this halacha only regard to a sin offering, one might have thought that it is not accepted due to the fact that it is for atonement, and as a transgressor he is undeserving of atonement. But with regard to a burnt offering, which is merely a gift, the doon from the Greek doon, meaning gift, especially one given as an expression of respect, say that one ought to accept it from him. And if the Torah had taught us this halacha in regard to a burnt offering, one might have thought that it is not accepted due to the fact that it is not an obligation. With regard to a sin offering, which is an obligation, say one ought to accept it from him. Therefore, both sources are necessary. In the previous part, the sages derived from the phrase "from the animal" that people who are similar to an animal are included among those from whom offerings are accepted. The Gemara seeks to understand the meaning of the phrase "similar to an animal" and asks, and everywhere that the word "animal" is written is interpreted referring to a person. Does this indicate a deficiency? But isn't it written, "Man and animal, you preserve, Lord"? In Psalm 36:7, Rabbi Yehuda said that Rav says these people who are clever in terms of their intellect like people, and despite their intelligence, they comport themselves humbly and self-effacing like an animal. What does that mean? Aruban Badash Simin Atzmon Givhema. In the Midrash, the verse is interpreted to mean that they are drawn after God as an animal is drawn after its master. The Yevayik Rabbah 27a. Others explain that the phrase "like an animal" in this context refers to a simple and complete acceptance of the Torah without question or doubt. And that's from the Netivat Olam, Netiv Hatamumut 2. The Gemara answers, there it is written "man" and "animal." Here the word "animal" alone is written. The Gemara asks, and every word that these terms "man" and "animal" are written together does it indicate a virtue. Isn't it written, "And I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of a man and with the seed of an animal," Jeremiah 31:26. And the sage interpreted the phrase "seed of an animal" as a reference to ignorant and inferior people. The Gemara answers, doesn't the verse separate man and animal? The seed of a man is discreet, and the seed of an animal is discreet. The Gemara revisits the matter of slaughter by a Samaritan and cites a mnemonic for the names of the sages that follow: Nun for Hanan, Kuf for Yaakov, Lamed for Ben Levi, and Peh for Kapora. Rabbi Hanan says that Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi says that Rabbi Yeshua Ben Levi says in the name of Bar Kapora. The opinions of Rabbi Gamliel and his court, Rabbi Gamliel and his court, there were three men named Rabbi Gamliel who filled the office of Nasi. The first was Rabbi Gamliel the elder, the grandson of Rabbi Hillel the elder, who served as Nasi during the Second Temple era. The second was Rabbi Gamliel of Yavna, a contemporary of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. He assumed the position of Nasi after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The third was Rabbi Gamliel, the eldest son of Rabbi Huda Nasi. Extensive information cited throughout the Talmud and Midrash about Rabbi Gamliel of Yavna, while there is very little related about Rabbi Gamliel, son of Rabbi Huda Nasi. In addition, aside from several statements in Tractate Ovid, very few statements appear in the Talmud. From the little related in his regard, it appears he was primarily his father's student and follower. He did not serve as Nasi for a long period. He had two sons, Rabbi Huda, who succeeded him as Nasi, and Hillel. There was a dispute among the early commentaries as to which Rabbi Gamliel the Gemara mentions here: Rabbi Gamliel of Yavna, Rabbi Gamliel son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. See Russian Tosfos here and the Ramban on 6a. There is a similar tradition of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi in the name of Bar Kapora that Rabban Gamliel and his court voted about a certain man seeks to accept Shavir 1:1. And there too, commentators agree about which Rabbi Gamliel is referenced. And the Shooter there. The fact that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Yavna holds the halacha state of a Samaritan is like that of a Jew. But Jerusalem Talmud Bocha 7:1 and his son of Yehuda Nasi holds that the halacha state of a Samaritan like that of a Gentile could indicate that the reference here to the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and that he followed his father's opinion, were counted with regard to the stage of the slaughter of a Samaritan, and they prohibited it. Rabbi Zeir said to Rabbi Yaakov Ba'iti, perhaps my teacher heard that halacha only in a case where a Jew is not standing over him. Rabbi Yaakov Ba'iti said to Rabbi Zeir, this one of the sages seems like one of the people who have not studied halacha. When a Jew is not standing over the Samaritan, is it necessary to say that it is prohibited to eat from what he slaughters? The Gemara asked, did Rabbi Zeir accept that response from Rabbi Yaakov Ba'idi, or did he not accept it from him? Coming here proved to resolve that dilemma from that which Rabbi Naaman Bar Yitzchak said, that Rabbi Asi said, I saw that Rabbi Yochanan ate from the slaughter of a Samaritan, and Rabbi Asi too ate from the slaughter of a Samaritan. And Rabbi Zeir wondered about it, whether perhaps they did not hear Allah that it's prohibited to eat from the slaughter of a Samaritan, but they heard it, and had they heard it, they would have accepted it. Or perhaps they heard Allah but did not accept it. Rabbi Zeir then resolved the matter for himself. It stands to reason that they heard it and did not accept it. As if it entered your mind that they did not hear it, but that they had heard it, but that had they heard it, they would have accepted. How does the matter eventuate, leading these sages to eat forbidden food? Now consider, if even through the animals of the righteous and blessed he does not generate mishaps, then it is not all the more so true that the righteous themselves do not experience mishaps. So Deacon Atzman, the righteous themselves, it appears that this statement in the Gemara means that God protects the righteous and not allow them to sin unwittingly or due to forgetfulness. Nevertheless, Tosfot note that there are in fact many examples of sages and righteous people who sinned in this manner. Therefore, some explain that the reference here to sinning by unwittingly eating forbidden foods, as that is considered a greater shortcoming for a righteous person than another type of transgression, either because it enters his body or because he derives enjoyment from it. The Esher Avraham. Tosfot note that Rabbi Zeir said elsewhere that with regard to this matter there has been a decline in the generations, and in later generations even the righteous sin. Some explain that the examples where the righteous sinned were in cases where they bore responsibility for the matter and were not sufficiently careful. In those cases, God did not prevent them from sinning. Others explain that this principle does not apply with regard to issuing halakha rulings, as that is the responsibility of the sage. Others explain that the principle, for there is not a righteous man upon the earth that does good and sins not, Ecclesiastes 7:20 Koheles. By contrast, the intention here that a righteous person does not sin in a case where it leads other sins, well, Ramban on Sefer on 7a, citing his teacher. I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and I wish you a very good day. All the best. Bye.